In this video, I want to show you how the bronchi branch and continue deeper into the lungs. But before I do that, I just want to show you on this model the passageway of air. So we start up here and we're breathing air in through our nose. It's passing through the nasal cavity, out the back through the nasopharynx, down through the oropharynx, and then the laryngopharynx, and then down into the larynx, and then into the trachea, and then that trachea is going to divide into these two primary bronchi for the two lungs. And you can see that this bronchi is going to divide into smaller and smaller branches and create what's called the bronchial tree. What I also want you to note is here we have our pulmonary artery, which is coming from the heart, full of deoxygenated blood. And this is also going to branch into smaller and smaller branches. And it's going to end in this really extensive capillary bed in the lungs where oxygen is picked up, and then those branches are going to bring that oxygenated blood back into the pulmonary vein, which is going to bring that oxygenated blood back over to the heart. Now let's look at the way the trachea branches into the bronchi in a little more detail. First, let's start by orienting ourselves again. So up here, we have the hyoid. We've got the thyroid membrane, the thyroid cartilage, the cricoid cartilage, these tracheal rings all the way down here of cartilage. So this is our larynx here. This is our trachea. The trachea is going to bifurcate into two branches for the two lungs. We're going to have a primary bronchi that heads over to the right lung and a primary bronchi that heads over to the left lung. The primary bronchi are going to branch again into what are called the secondary bronchi. So over here on the right hand side, we've got 1, 2, 3 branches. That's because we have 3 lobes in the right lung. On the left side, we just have 1, 2 branches because remember there's only 2 lobes in the left lung. Now these secondary bronchi are sometimes called the lobar bronchi, and that just reflects the fact that they are going to run into the 3 lobes on the right, the 2 lobes on the left. Those secondary bronchi are going to branch again into the tertiary bronchi, so that's what we see here in these colorful extensions. And those tertiary bronchi are sometimes called segmental bronchi, and they're going to correspond to the lobules within the lungs. So you can see there's quite a few branches here because there's quite a few lobules. Now those are going to run into the bronchioles and then the terminal bronchioles, and that's going to be deeper in the lung than we can see here on this model. Let's look at one last model that shows us the end of this pathway. So here what we're looking at is a bronchiole, and that bronchiole is going to branch into these terminal bronchioles that are going to head into the respiratory bronchioles. We can't see the respiratory bronchioles here. They're heading into the alveolar sac. So if we look here at this cutaway, what we can see is the alveolar duct. So the bronchiole is going to lead to a terminal bronchiole that's going to continue down into the respiratory bronchiole that's going to end in this alveolar duct that's going to bring the air into this alveolar sac. The alveolar sacs are made up of individual alveoli, much like a bunch of grapes. So the alveoli is the individual grape, the cluster would be the alveolar sac. The alveoli are made up of simple squamous epithelium, so it's going to be easy for gas exchange to occur. There's also macrophages in this area, and there's some cells that produce surfactant to help keep the tissue from sticking to itself. If we look here, we can see this extensive capillary network. So lots of capillaries are going to be running along the alveoli, which is going to allow for that gas exchange to occur. So we've got the pulmonary artery bringing in that deoxygenated blood, and those branches coming down into these capillaries. The oxygen gets picked up, brings that oxygenated blood out the pulmonary vein back to the heart.